It's the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. It's hard to believe that it's actually been that long. And people have asked me over and over in the comments to tell more stories from the road. And so I figured for the anniversary, I'd tell you one. And this isn't some polished lesson. It's just where I was and what I was doing and what kind of stuck with me. So we had just come out of Indiana, Pennsylvania, which is where Cary Grant's from, ironically. And I think that's kind of hilarious because Indiana, PA is not Hollywood. It is not red carpets and flashing cameras. It's this little college town with lots of dive bars and a Sheetz. And who doesn't love a Sheetz? And yet, it was my favorite stop, hands down. Over the years, it was the one place that we would always hit on tour that felt like home. This place was run by a husband and wife team, and they were absolutely the salt of the earth. They were the kind of people that lived for what they did. I mean, there were no gimmicks, there was no BS. They were just these great people who made a room feel alive. And I just adored them. And we become lifelong friends. And somehow, all these years later, they're still running this same place, still making people feel welcome. It's magic, really. For us, Indiana was like an anchor in a life that was usually chaotic. The road was wild and unpredictable. Sometimes it was insane, but every time we rolled into that town, it grounded us. It was a reminder that, yeah, this is a crazy tour life, and that's real. And we're right in the middle of it. From that gig, we rolled into Pittsburgh and checked into this hotel that had like outdoor entry doors. It was like one of those hotels with the walls that are so thin that you can hear your neighbor flipping channels. And out front sat our van, which was impossible to miss. It was plastered head to toe with giant celebrity faces and tour branding, sponsors and logos. It was like a running billboard. And for once, we actually had a day off. And maybe that's why I remember it the way I do. Touring with the Playmates most of the time meant limos and champagnes and Super Bowl tickets, but that night we went bowling. I can remember there being like sticky beer stained carpet and rental shoes that had probably been worn by like 10,000 sweaty feet and pictures of Miller Lite that were flat and warm, but only like $2. And this was our big glamorous night off, and we were thrilled by it. It was awesome. We were young, we were loud, we were living fast, and that was the dream. It was the open road and a tour bus and a night off and nothing to do but laugh and bowl in Pittsburgh. And we didn't just bowl a few frames and leave, we closed this place down. And by the end of the night, we weren't outsiders. We were part of it. The locals were hanging around us, buying us rounds. Playmates were signing bar napkins. The camera guys hamming it up, throwing gutter balls just to keep everybody laughing. It was definitely not glamorous. It definitely wasn't staged, but it was fun. And it was the kind of night that burned itself into memory because it was nothing and somehow everything all at the same time. Now, the next morning flipped everything. Katrina was on land, and every TV in the hotel was blaring the same images on repeat. Highways were underwater, and rooftops were barely showing, and neighborhoods are torn apart, families displaced, people are gone. I mean, you didn't need any sound. These visual images across the screen told you everything you needed to know. Next thing you know, we packed up and loaded the bus and pointed it towards the next city. And in the back, we had this little 13-inch TV that had a built-in VHS. And most of the time, it was playing movies like Tombstone or Honey on repeat. Definitely some random bargain bin tape that we had picked up at a gas station. And that day, though, we were spinning the antenna and trying to catch a signal, anything to hold, a local channel long enough to keep up with the coverage. Static and broken voices, fragments of disaster, enough to know that it was bad, and it was really bad. And on the road, the next thing we know, we're hitting gas stations that are having shortages, stations that are completely running dry, Prices are going through the roof. They're hoarding gas. You pull in and hope there was even fuel because you just didn't know if the next one down the road would be empty or not. Every stop was the same. Pump what you could, pay too much, and hope it got you far enough to reach the next destination. But the story didn't just end when the water went down. The scars stayed. And a year later, I was back on the Gulf, staying in little roadside hotels where you could still see the water lines, halfway up the walls, like tattoos the buildings never asked for. Whole towns felt different, and some never came back. Others carried that weight in silence, in the slower way people moved, in the gaps where noise used to be. And yet, the people rose. Life carried on, and kids went back to school, bars reopened, music drifted back into the air. And the grief was there for sure, but so was joy. And that's what New Orleans and the Gulf has always been, both. Joy and grief, pain and music, loss and love, the good and the bad showing up together and never taking turns, because that's the reminder. Life doesn't wait for us to clean up the mess. It's both the pain and the party, and you don't get to pick which one. I'm not really sure what I'm even trying to say. It's not really a tidy little story or even a fable, but it's mine, and it's how I remember it. But I do know this. I was in a bowling alley in Pittsburgh while one of the biggest storms in history tried to erase an entire section of our nation completely off the map. And the Gulf Coast, New Orleans especially, reminds us of something we should never forget. And that's that the real spirit isn't clean. It's not one-sided. It's rhythm and grief, joy and loss, old and new, all kind of tangled together. Music and mourning are on the same block. Laughter in the middle of heartbreak. The light and the dark showing up together and refusing to take turns. So this is me trying something new here on the channel, telling stories from the road, from my life, the way that I remember them from way back when. If you want more of this, let me know in the comments. If not, that's fine too. Either way, get busy living and be kind.